Every generation inherits a financial belief. Some become truths, others become traps. For decades, one idea has quietly shaped the lives of millions. Study hard. Get a good job. Earn a good salary. Work for 40 years. Retire comfortably. It sounds logical. It sounds responsible. It even sounds safe. But what if one part of that belief is fundamentally flawed? What if the very thing most people spend their entire lives chasing can never deliver the freedom they hope for? Imagine this. It's 8:47 on a Monday morning. The doors of a glass elevator open onto the 35th floor of one of the country's largest corporate headquarters. Inside the boardroom, 12 executives take their seats. The walls are covered with digital dashboards. Revenue, profit, market share, growth projections. The quarterly business review begins. One executive proudly announces, "Revenue grew by 28% this year." Another says, "Operating margins exceeded expectations." A third presents a 5-year expansion strategy. Everything looks impressive. Then, the chairman quietly closes the presentation. He looks around the room and asks a question no one expected. If every one of you stopped working tomorrow, who among you would still become richer next month? Silence. Not because they didn't understand the question, but because they understood it perfectly. The highest paid executive in the room slowly lowers his eyes. He owns a luxury apartment, 2 expensive cars, a prestigious title, a 7-figure annual salary. But almost every rupee he earns depends on one thing: showing up to work. Across the table sits another gentleman. He hasn't drawn a salary in years. Yet every morning, his businesses open. His investments grow. His rental properties generate income. His intellectual property earns royalties. While he sleeps, money continues to work. Now ask yourself, who is truly wealthy? The man with the highest salary, or the man who no longer needs one? That single question separates 2 completely different worlds. The world of earning and the world of building. Welcome to Hypermedia University, where ideas become understanding. Understanding becomes action, and action becomes transformation. Today's lesson comes from Invest Life System, a place where we explore the systems behind wealth, business, career, entrepreneurship, and society, not through shortcuts, but through timeless principles and practical thinking. This isn't a motivational speech. This isn't a get-rich-quick formula. And this certainly isn't financial advice promising overnight success. This is education. Because history repeatedly teaches us one lesson: people who understand money make different decisions, and different decisions create different futures. If your goal is not merely to earn more, but to understand money at a level that changes the way you live, I invite you to stay with this entire financial freedom blueprint. Each episode is carefully designed to build on the previous one. By the end of this journey, you won't simply know more about finance. You'll think differently. You'll ask better questions. You'll make better decisions. And over time, those decisions can compound into extraordinary results. Let's begin with a statement that sounds shocking. Salary is one of the greatest inventions in modern society. It gave millions of families dignity. It created stability. It built careers. It transformed economies. But here's the part nobody tells you. Salary was never designed to make you wealthy. It was designed to compensate you for your time. And that distinction changes everything. In the corporate world, there's a phrase often heard in strategy meetings. Revenue is important. Sustainable cash flow is essential. Now let's translate that into personal finance. Your salary is your revenue. Your assets create your cash flow. Revenue pays today's bills. Cash flow builds tomorrow's freedom. The problem is, most people spend 40 years increasing revenue without ever building cash flow. And that's where the real story begins. Rahul and Arjun graduated from the same engineering college. They sat in the same classroom, prepared for the same interviews, received their offer letters on the same day. And, quite interestingly, they started their careers with exactly the same annual salary. If you had met them on their first day at work, you would never have imagined that 20 years later, one would become financially free, while the other would still be worrying about monthly EMIs. The difference wasn't intelligence. It wasn't education. It wasn't luck. And it certainly wasn't salary. The difference was something far less obvious. It was the way they thought. Every payday, Rahul looked at one number. How much did I receive? Every payday, Arjun looked at a different number. How much can I keep working for me? At first, the difference seemed insignificant, almost invisible. But as the years passed, that small difference became a financial canyon. The ancient Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu once said, "The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step." Financial freedom follows the same principle. No one becomes wealthy because of one brilliant investment. People become wealthy because of thousands of small financial decisions made consistently over decades. The world celebrates dramatic success, but wealth is usually built quietly. While others are sleeping, someone is investing. While others are spending, someone is buying assets. While others are chasing appearances, someone is building ownership. We rarely notice those moments. We only notice the result. Let's pause for a moment. Imagine you're standing outside two houses. The first house is magnificent. Luxury cars fill the driveway. Designer interiors. Latest gadgets. An impressive lifestyle. The second house is simple. No expensive cars. No extravagant decorations. Nothing that attracts attention. Which family is wealthier? Most people choose the first, because our minds naturally confuse appearance with prosperity. In behavioral economics, this is called the availability bias. We judge financial success by what we can see. But wealth is largely invisible. You can see a Rolex. You cannot see an investment portfolio. You can see a luxury SUV. You cannot see disciplined monthly investments. You can see an expensive vacation. You cannot see a diversified asset allocation strategy. This is why appearances often deceive us. In corporate strategy meetings, there's another phrase used by CEOs and investors. Never confuse revenue with enterprise value. Let's simplify that. A company can generate enormous revenue, yet still lose money. Similarly, a person can earn an enormous salary, yet still fail to build wealth. Revenue impresses the market. Enterprise value creates long-term success. Salary impresses society. Assets create financial independence. That is one of the most important distinctions you'll ever learn. Now let's revisit our two friends. 5 years passed. Rahul received 2 promotions. His salary almost doubled. Naturally, his lifestyle evolved. A premium apartment. A luxury motorcycle. Weekend trips. Dining at expensive restaurants. A new phone every year. He worked hard, and he deserved every reward. There was nothing wrong with enjoying life. The problem was subtle. Every increase in income immediately became an increase in spending. Without realizing it, Rahul had accepted an invisible promotion. Not in his company, but in his expenses. Arjun also celebrated his promotions. He traveled. He upgraded his lifestyle. But before he rewarded himself, he rewarded his future. The first transfer after every salary credit wasn't to a shopping app. It wasn't to an automobile dealer. It wasn't to an online marketplace. It went directly into investments. He often told himself something that later became his personal philosophy. Pay your future before you pay your present. At first, his friends laughed. They called him overly cautious. Some even joked. Life is meant to be enjoyed. Arjun smiled. He agreed. But he quietly understood something most people hadn't yet discovered. Delayed gratification isn't the opposite of enjoyment. It's the foundation of lasting freedom. Psychologists call this temporal discounting. Human beings naturally value immediate rewards more than future rewards. A new phone today feels more exciting than a larger investment portfolio 10 years from now. A luxury holiday feels more satisfying than increasing retirement savings. Our emotions are wired for today. But wealth is built by respecting tomorrow. That's why Warren Buffett once observed that the stock market transfers money from the impatient to the patient. The same principle applies far beyond investing. Life transfers opportunities from the impatient to the disciplined. Let me ask you something. Imagine receiving a salary increase of $25,000 every month. What would be the first thought that enters your mind? A better apartment, a bigger car, international travel, or a larger investment. There isn't a right or wrong answer. But your first instinct reveals something profound about your financial mindset. Boardrooms call this capital allocation behavior. In simple language, it means deciding where your money goes before it disappears. Every rupee you earn has only one job. It must work for either today's happiness or tomorrow's freedom. The wisest financial decisions manage to achieve both. If this conversation is changing the way you think about money, stay with this financial freedom blueprint. Because in the coming episodes, we won't simply discuss investing. We'll explore how wealthy families think across generations, how businesses create value, how entrepreneurs evaluate risk, how investors identify opportunities, and how ordinary individuals can apply those same principles in everyday life. By the end of this course, my goal isn't just that you earn more. My goal is that you think at a completely different level. Because every financial revolution begins, not in a bank account, but in the mind. Imagine that you are the chairman of a company. Not any company. Your own life. Every month, your company receives revenue. That revenue is called your salary. Now, before making any financial decision, every successful board asks one question. Where should we allocate our capital? Notice the wording. Not, how do we spend it? But, where do we allocate it? That single change in language changes behavior. Because spending is emotional. Allocation is strategic. From today onwards, I want you to replace one sentence forever. Never say, I'm spending money. Instead, ask yourself, am I allocating capital wisely? It sounds like corporate language. Because it is. And great financial decisions begin with great financial thinking. Let's return to Rahul and Arjun. 10 years have now passed. Both have become senior managers. Both earn almost 2 lakh per month. Both are respected. Both work incredibly hard. On paper, their lives appear identical. But one Friday evening changes everything. The company announces a global restructuring. Entire departments will be consolidated. Some roles will disappear. Some employees will be reassigned. Others will lose their jobs. The atmosphere inside the office changes overnight. Coffee conversations become whispers. People refresh their emails every few minutes. Nobody knows what Monday morning will bring. Rahul doesn't sleep that night. His apartment EMI. His car loan. his children's school fees, his credit card bills. Everything depends on one thing: his next salary. Across the city, Arjun also receives the same email. He reads it, closes his laptop, then quietly walks into the living room where his daughter is building a puzzle. He sits beside her, smiles, and begins helping her finish it. Was Arjun unconcerned? No. He simply understood something Rahul had never built: margin. In aviation, pilots never plan a flight with just enough fuel. Every flight carries reserve fuel, because uncertainty is inevitable. Financially intelligent people live the same way. They build financial reserves, emergency funds, passive income, multiple income streams, skills that remain valuable regardless of market conditions. This is called financial resilience. In boardrooms, resilience is considered one of the highest indicators of organizational strength. For individuals, it is equally powerful, because resilience gives you something salary never can: choice. Monday arrives. Rahul survives the restructuring. So does Arjun. Nothing changes. At least, nothing visible. But something invisible changes forever. Rahul realizes how close he came to financial disaster. Arjun realizes how grateful he is for the systems he built over the last decade. The lesson isn't about layoffs. The lesson is about dependence. The more your financial life depends on one source, the greater your risk. In investment management, professionals rarely place all their capital into one company. Why? Because concentration creates vulnerability. Diversification creates resilience. Yet millions of people unknowingly invest 100% of their financial future into a single source: their monthly salary. Ironically, many people diversify their investment portfolio, but never diversify their income. Here's a question that many CEOs ask before approving any strategic investment: what happens if our primary revenue source disappears tomorrow? Now ask yourself the same question. What happens if your salary disappears? Not permanently, just for 6 months. Would your investments continue generating income? Would your emergency fund protect your family? Would your skills create consulting opportunities? Would your business continue operating? Or would everything stop? That question is uncomfortable. But uncomfortable questions often create extraordinary growth. One evening, Rahul visits Arjun. For the first time in years, they sit on the balcony, watching the city lights. After a long silence, Rahul asks a question: how are you always so calm about money? Arjun smiles, not because he knows everything, but because he finally understands one principle. Rahul, for years, I thought my employer was paying my salary. Today, my assets pay a growing part of my life. Rahul remains silent. Arjun continues. Salary gave me a career, but assets are giving me choices. That sentence changes Rahul forever. Not because it contains complicated finance, but because it changes the question. Instead of asking, how can I earn more? Rahul begins asking, what can I own that earns more? That is the moment wealth creation begins. Not inside a stock market, not inside a bank, inside the mind. There's an old saying in strategy consulting: don't optimize the present at the expense of the future. Simple translation: don't sacrifice tomorrow's freedom for today's excitement. Every financial decision is a vote, not just for what you want today, but for the person you're becoming tomorrow. If this conversation has challenged the way you think about money, pause for a moment and ask yourself one question: Am I building a life that depends on my effort, or a life supported by my systems? Write your answer in the comments, because your answer isn't just for me. It's for yourself. Sometimes the first step toward transformation is simply admitting where we truly are that evening. Rahul didn't open his investment app. He didn't search for the best mutual fund. He didn't watch another finance video. Instead, he picked up a notebook. At the top of the first page, he wrote 4 words. Where does my money go? For the next hour, he listed every expense. Rent, EMIs, fuel, entertainment, subscriptions he had forgotten existed, online shopping, food delivery, coffee, small purchases that never seemed important. When he finished, he wasn't shocked by how little he earned. He was shocked by how unconsciously he spent. For years, he believed his biggest financial problem was insufficient income. That night, he discovered it was insufficient awareness. And awareness is where every transformation begins. There is an old management principle that says, what gets measured gets managed. Every successful business measures performance, sales, profit, cash flow, customer satisfaction, inventory, risk. Imagine running a company without measuring anything. It would eventually fail. Yet millions of people attempt to build wealth without measuring their own finances. No personal balance sheet, no monthly cash flow review, no investment dashboard, no financial goals. Then they wonder why progress feels invisible. In business, measurement creates improvement. In personal finance, it creates freedom. The following weekend, Rahul visited Arjun again. This time, he didn't ask about investments. He asked a better question. Where should I begin? Arjun smiled. Not with stocks. Not with real estate. Not with cryptocurrency. Rahul looked surprised. Arjun continued. You begin by becoming the chief executive officer of your own financial life. Rahul laughed. My financial life doesn't feel like a company. Arjun replied. That's exactly the problem. Think about that. Every successful organization has a vision, a strategy, a budget, risk management, performance reviews, long-term planning, continuous learning. Now ask yourself, does your financial life have those things? Or does it simply have income and expenses? That distinction separates financial survival from financial leadership. Boardrooms often use another expression. Every allocation reflects a priority. In everyday language, where your money goes shows what matters most to you. Your bank statement tells a story, not the story you tell others, the story you tell yourself. It reveals your habits, your priorities, your fears, your ambitions, your discipline, and ultimately, your future. Over the next 5 years, Rahul made no dramatic decisions, no overnight success, no risky speculation, no lottery, no miracle investment. He simply built systems. Every salary day, investments happened automatically. Emergency savings increased steadily. Debt reduced consistently. He learned new skills, started consulting on weekends, read books instead of endlessly scrolling social media. Gradually, money stopped controlling him. He started controlling money. Notice something important. Nothing extraordinary happened, yet everything changed. Because extraordinary lives are usually built through ordinary disciplines repeated consistently. Let's pause here. This lesson isn't really about salary. Salary is simply the symbol. The real lesson is dependence. Anything your life depends upon completely owns you. If your happiness depends entirely on external validation, it owns you. If your confidence depends entirely on your job title, it owns you. If your financial security depends entirely on one monthly salary, it owns you. Freedom begins the moment dependence begins to decrease. That is true in finance. It is true in business. And it is true in life. One day, many years later, Rahul received another promotion. Ironically, it was the largest salary increase of his career. But something had changed. He no longer celebrated because his salary increased. He celebrated because his salary was no longer the foundation of his future. It had become fuel. Fuel to build larger assets, larger investments, larger opportunities, greater freedom. That is the difference between working for money and having money work for you. Now let me leave you with one final image. Imagine standing at a crossroads. The road on the left is crowded. Millions of people walk it every morning. Study, job, salary, spend, repeat. The road on the right is quieter. Learn, save, invest, build, own, create, serve, multiply. Both roads require effort, but only one gradually reduces the need to exchange your time for money. The choice isn't made once. It's made every payday, every investment, every purchase, every financial decision. So before this day ends, I want you to do one thing. Take a sheet of paper. Write 2 headings. Assets, liabilities. Don't judge yourself. Don't compare yourself with anyone else. Simply begin. Because every great business starts with understanding its current position. And every financially free person started exactly where you are today. With one honest decision. To stop living accidentally. And start building intentionally. If today's lesson changed even one financial belief you've held for years, stay with this journey. The financial freedom blueprint isn't designed to entertain you. It's designed to transform the way you think. In our next episode, we'll explore something that every financially successful person understands, but very few people are ever taught. The wealth pyramid, the 5 levels of financial freedom. You'll discover why some people survive. Some become comfortable. Some become wealthy. And a very small number achieve complete financial independence. If this episode gave you value, share it with someone who is working incredibly hard, yet still wondering why financial freedom feels so far away. Sometimes, the greatest gift we can give another person is a different way of thinking. Remember, a salary rewards your work. Assets reward your wisdom. Systems reward your discipline. But financial freedom rewards your patience. This is Invest Life System. Society, Wealth, Business, Career, Entrepreneurship. By Annika Siri. Until our next lesson, keep learning, keep building, and keep investing. Not just in markets, but in yourself. Because the greatest asset you'll ever own is the person you're becoming.